Hi everyone, this video continues our series on the good life, and here we're going to be looking at some of the problems with the hedonistic view. So we're going to start by reviewing what hedonism is, and then we'll jump into the problems, which we'll present in the form of three arguments: the experience machine argument, the argument from false happiness, and the argument from autonomy. All three of these are intimately related to one another and similar in a number of ways, but we're going to treat them separately. So remember, hedonism is a philosophical view that says that happiness is the only thing that intrinsically contributes to a good life. So a lot of people find hedonism attractive. They think, pleasure. I like pleasure. You're telling me that I just need to get as much pleasure as I can? That's the way to sort of live the best life possible for me? Sounds pretty cool. Sign me up. But we have to separate two claims here. The hedonist thinks that happiness intrinsically contributes to a good life, but also that nothing else does. If you reject either of these two claims, then you are not a hedonist. The worrisome part of the hedonistic view for most people is this claim that the only thing that matters to a good life is happiness. Why should we think that there's more to a good life than just pleasure? Why should we think that that second claim that the hedonist makes is mistaken? Well, the last video presented the experience machine, which is a famous thought experiment from Robert Nozick that he gave in the sort of 1970s. It goes as follows. It's a machine that can send electrical signals in your brain so as to create an exact simulation of any possible experience. Scientists programmed this computer to give you a lifetime of the happiest overall experiences, where these experiences are tailored just for you and your preferences. So the experiences you get in this machine might be different than the ones I get, because different experiences make you happy than me. Once you plug in, you think you're in the real world, you have no memory of your life outside the machine, and your entire life from that point is lived in the machine, and you're as happy as you could possibly be. And you believe yourself to be doing all the things that you truly enjoy. So I need to stress a couple points just to make sure you're absolutely clear of what's going on here. You don't know that you're in the machine when you're in it. So you don't know that it's a simulation. You think it's real. The experiences you have while you're in the machine are actually controlled by the program that the machine is running. So when you're in the machine, you're not in control of anything. You might feel like you are, but you're not. All these experiences are sort of pre-programmed. There's a sort of script, and these sort of experiences are being sort of sent into you by the machine. The machine is 100% safe. So you're going to live just as long in the machine as you would out of the machine, and you don't ever have to worry that someone's going to sort of pull the plug on you. I need to also clarify this idea that you're going to experience the happiest life possible in the machine. This doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be sunshine and roses the entire time. Some people think that if all you ever experienced was pleasure 100% of the time, it'd be rather boring, and they wouldn't be very happy with those kinds of experiences. So, for instance, someone might be happiest if they were to first experience the struggle of practicing their music day in and day out until finally it pays off after years of practice and struggle. Some people think that by experiencing that struggle first, when they finally do experience the highs, they're going to sort of appreciate it that much more and get even that much more enjoyment out of it. And it might sort of increase that enjoyment so much that the life with a little bit of struggle at the beginning first actually includes more pleasure overall. If you think that you would enjoy that kind of life most, then those are the kinds of experiences the machine would give you. But now, with all those clarifications, if you were given the opportunity to live the rest of your life in this machine, would you take it? Nozick thinks that most people are going to say no. They're going to say, I don't want to live I'd rather live in the real world. If he's right, it looks like there's a problem for hedonism, because it looks like you think that there's more to a good life than just pleasure. The experience can give you all the pleasure, but there's something that it can't give you that you care about. So we can turn this into an argument against hedonism. The argument says if hedonism is true, then a life lived in the experience machine would be better for us than a life lived outside the machine. But a life in the experience machine isn't actually better for us than a life outside the machine. Thus, hedonism must be false. So this is a valid argument. It's modus tollens. If A, then B, not B, therefore not A. So the question is, are the premises true? Well, premise 1 has to be true just given the definition of hedonism and given the description of the experience machine. Hedonism says the only thing that matters to a good life is pleasure. The experience machine thought experiment says that the machine gives us the most pleasurable life overall. But according to premise 2, it's not actually the best life for us. Why should we believe that? Well, the mere fact that almost nobody wants to go in the machine seems to suggest that there's something that the machine can't give us that we care about, that we think is important to living a good life as well. This raises the question of, well, what is this missing ingredient? What is it that we care about that we wouldn't be getting in the machine? What is this other aspect to a good life? Here are some potential answers. Some people think that what's missing from the machine are authentic experiences. Those experiences are coming from a false conception of the world. Yes, we want that pleasure, but we want that pleasure to come from authentic, genuine experiences. Some people think that what's missing is autonomy. That's what we really sort of care about. Yes, we want pleasure, but we also want to be in control of our own lives. But when we go into the machine sort of robs us of that control. Other people think that, well, when you go in the machine sort of robs your life of any sort of meaning or purpose. You might think that your life has meaning and purpose, but in reality, none of what you're doing sort of matters. Other people also think that, well, look, we also want to be a certain kind of person. In the machine, we have certain kinds of experiences, but I don't want to just experience certain things. I want to be a good person. I want to be a good father. I want to be an honest person, a virtuous person, a courageous person. But in the machine, I just have experiences. But it's not clear what kind of person I am. So this can also lead us into an argument from false happiness that your book introduces. It says, if hedonism is true, then our lives go well to the extent that we're happy. But this just isn't true. Those people whose happiness is based on false beliefs, on non-authentic experiences, have worse lives than those whose happiness is based on true beliefs. So those people whose happiness comes from authentic experiences, even if both lives are equally happy. Thus, hedonism must be false. This is a valid argument. Yet again, modus tollens, if A, then B, not B, therefore not A. So the question is, are the premises true? Well, premise 1 just follows from the definition of hedonism again, since it says that happiness is the only thing that matters to a good life. The key premise is premise 2. Why should we think that those whose happiness is based on false beliefs actually live worse lives than those who have happiness that's based on true beliefs? Well, look at the experience machine. That's happiness based on false beliefs, and almost nobody wants to go in. That suggests that we think that a life with happiness based on true beliefs is better for us. Or alternatively, imagine two people in the real world even, where they're both in a sort of happy relationship. But one of them, their happiness comes from true beliefs that their spouse cares about them and is sort of faithful to them. And the other one is being cheated on constantly. Their spouse doesn't care about them, but they don't know that. They can't tell. They never find out. So they still get all the same sort of happiness and pleasure, but it's via sort of a false conception of their relationship. Well, you don't want to be the dupe. You want to be in this genuine relationship, even if you can't tell the difference when you're in it. Another argument is the argument from autonomy. And this says, look, if hedonism is true, then autonomy contributes to a good life only insofar as it makes us happy. But we oftentimes think that autonomy directly contributes to a good life, so even when it fails to make us happy. Thus, hedonism is false. Another valid argument using the modus tollens structure. If A, then B, not B, therefore not A. So the question is, are the premises true? Premise 1, yet again, just follows from the definition of hedonism. Look, hedonists can say that autonomy can instrumentally improve your life, but they can't say that it sort of intrinsically contributes to a good life. Well, why should I believe premise 2, though? Why should I believe that autonomy can sometimes intrinsically contribute to a good life, independently of the happiness it brings us? Look at the example of the experience machine. Someone might say, look, I don't want to go in there because I don't want the computer to be in control. I want to be in control of my life. That seems to suggest that we care about our autonomy independently of happiness. Think about the fact that some people refuse certain kinds of end-of-life treatments that might sort of relieve sort of pain and suffering at the end of their life because those medicines sort of cloud their minds so that they're not able to rationally think about sort of their situation, and it thereby sort of robs them of their control or their autonomy over their situation. They would rather experience the suffering and maintain that autonomy. And that suggests that they care about that autonomy even at the expense of happiness. All right, so that's motivation for that second premise. One kind of response says, look, maybe the hedonist is actually right. Maybe the life in the experience machine really is the best kind of life we live, but we don't want to go in the machine merely out of some sort of bias we have. But if you make that sort of maneuver, you have to say, well, what kind of bias? How does it work? Well, one sort of possible answer is suggested by philosophers who have actually done some sort of studies where they give this kind of thought experiment to people and see how they respond. When you give them the experience machine as originally described, most people say they don't want to go in the machine. And that's across cultures, across age groups, etc. But if you give them a slightly different description, you say, look, imagine that you're already in the machine and you don't know it. And someone shows up and says, hey, look, 5 years ago, you came to Experience Incorporated, and we plugged you in this machine, and we're just checking in to see if you want to stay in the machine, or we can stop it right now, and we can sort of let you out to the real world. Well, when you give this sort of description, a lot of people say, no, they'd rather just stay in the simulation. If they're already in it, they say, no, I want to keep my current life. This suggests that maybe people don't actually think that the life outside the machine is better for them. They just have a bias towards the life that they're currently living instead. Another possible sort of response is to say that maybe some of these other ingredients that people think are intrinsically valuable, maybe they only think that because they automatically associate it with happiness. Look, in the real world, if your autonomy is being violated, say by an authoritarian government or some sort of dictatorship, people who live in those kinds of countries usually have less happy lives. And we sort of associate autonomy with happiness. Maybe sort of the value we place on happiness sort of rubs off on autonomy. So we mistakenly think that the value we give to the effect, we thereby sort of attribute it to the cause of that effect by mistake, since they're so closely associated within our experience. So that's all for this video. See you next time. Bye-bye.